For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. While most of the attention is naturally focused on the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the likely outcome in the next fortnight or so, a long-term impact on India's defense preparedness because of India's dependence on Russian and Ukrainian armament industry is something that we are going to discuss in this week's Simply Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. So globally, many countries have thought about India's stand vis-a-vis the Russia-Ukraine conflict and India's abstention from multilateral forums when resolutions were passed against Russia for invading Ukraine. Why is India so reluctant to take sides? We have explained in different videos and different discussions with experts about India's stand vis-a-vis this war. It is driven by national interest. It is also driven by pragmatism. But there is also one practical side to India's stand, and that is about India's dependence, if not full dependence, on the Russian and Ukrainian arms, spare parts, and maintenance contracts with Russian and Ukrainian arms companies. Let's take the three armed forces of India. The highest dependence that the armed forces have is in the Air Force. The Air Force has Russian origin Sukhoi 30 MKIs. There is MiG-29 fighter jets, and of course the old fleet of MiG-21s, which are on their way out of the Air Force but are still being used in some bases across the country. Now, their maintenance, their spare parts, the supply of the kits for their upgrade, all of them come from Russia. In fact, the Sukhoi 30 planes are being assembled in India for a long time, but the spares still come from Russia. Similarly, the vintage MiG-21s, spares only come from Russia. They are not manufactured in India. They are not stored in India. The supply comes only from Russia. And MiG-29s, of course, are in between Sukhois and MiG-21s. And remember, Sukhoi 30 twin-engine fighter jets are Indian Air Force's mainstay. They are heavy fighters and they are spread in their deployment from east right across the country. And even in Pune, which is in western India, their deployments are seen. They are capable fighters and they are the mainstay of the Indian Air Force, as I said. Although Indian Air Force has now inducted the 36 Rafale fighter jets from France purchased in 2016, the dependence on the Russian fleet or Russian origin fleet is still heavy in the Indian Air Force. The other worrying part for the Indian Air Force if this war goes on longer is the fact that its AN-32 upgrade program is rooted in Ukraine. Spare parts from there and technical manpower, skilled manpower from Ukraine was helping the Indian Air Force to do the midlife upgrade of AN-32 transport planes. Now, if this war goes on longer, the supply of the spare parts as well as of the people coming and helping the Indian Air Force may be affected. That's the worry that the Indian Air Force has. Of course, the S-400 air defense missiles, which India again contracted with Russia, are in the pipeline. A couple of batteries of the 6 or the 5 missile batteries that have been purchased by India are already in India. They have been deployed at a couple of places, but the remaining are yet to be delivered. Now, if that gets delayed, it affects Air Force's air defense plans, especially in the light of the Chinese aggression in the north and particularly in Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh. So that's the other worry that the Indian Air Force has. Now come to the Navy. Navy has had the longest relationship with Russian shipyards. India's only aircraft carrier right now, functional aircraft carrier, proven aircraft carrier, INS Vikramaditya, is of Russian origin. And the MiG-29K fighter jets embarked on the INS Vikramaditya are also of Russian origin. So their maintenance, their spare parts in the long term are dependent on what happens in Russia and how Russia supplies those spare parts and how technicians from Russia come and help maintain the fleet of MiG-29Ks and of course the big ship, the mothership in the Indian Navy. Then there are 4 stealth frigates on order in Russian shipyards. Now this is the peculiarity. While the ships are being manufactured or built in Russian shipyards, some of the turbines for those ships had to come from Ukraine. Despite the Cold War between Ukraine and Russia since 2014, this was going on smoothly. Now, how will that affect how much of the setback it will be for the Indian Navy remains to be seen, but certainly there will be worried faces, worried planners in the Indian Navy on this program particularly. Then remember, Russia has also given India the lease of nuclear-capable, nuclear-powered INS Chakra, the nuclear submarine leased from Russia. Now, that lease was over and India was supposed to get one more INS Chakra for training its people in submarine warfare or in the submarine operations. India is, of course, building its own SSNs. INS Arihant is already inducted. There are other 2 on order and in various stages of sea trial at Vizag on the eastern seaboard. But Russia is the only country which has supplied India with the strategic platforms like the INS Chakra twice in the past. That has given India the requisite expertise, requisite background and requisite operational experience in running submarines for a longer time. Similarly, with the Indian Army, all its armored strengths, the T-72s and T-90s tanks are of Russian origin. There are more than 3,000 tanks in the Indian Armored Corps armory, and all of them eventually will have to depend on supplies and spare parts from Russia. Will this get affected? While the MOD has put up a brave face and said the Russians have assured them that this will not get affected because the war is not happening in Russia, but the worry is about how to make payments to Russia. With the West having weaponized the financial instruments like SWIFT banking system, paying the Russians under a rupee-ruble arrangement may be the way out, but it is again difficult because not everything can be done through that arrangement. And Indian banks will be wary of paying the Russians through the old system or even through the rupee-ruble arrangement because they will fear sanctions from the West. Although my personal sense is that the West will not sanction India, given its desire to see India in its corner. If it was a boxing ring, the West and the Americans especially want India in its corner and not depend on Russia. They've been trying to wean away India from the Russian dependence, and that dependence has been coming down gradually from 69% of Indian military's platforms and equipment being of Russian origin. In the recent past, in the past couple of years, it has come down to 47 or 48%. It's quite a drop in 10 years. This figure of 69% was around 2012, 2013. So less than 10 years, this dependence has decreased to about 49% in these intervening years. But still, it's a large dependence. Nearly 50% of the dependence being on the Russian or the old Soviet Union origin equipment is not a good sign for Indian armed forces, and they will be watching this war very closely, if for nothing else, but for this simple fact that the equipment that they have, majority or little less than a majority of equipment is Russian origin. But that apart, the Indian defense planners already know that they need to get away from this dependence, and therefore the call by Prime Minister Modi and the MOD for self-reliance in defense. Atmanirbharta in defense has been a mantra for the past 3 or 4 years. Make in India became a buzzword in 2016. Since then, in the second tenure of this government, it is now morphed into Atmanirbharta in defense. And as the Indian Army Chief, General M.M. Naravane, told me in that interview that we have on both our websites, bharatshakti.in as well as StratNews Global, 85% of the contracts in the past 1 year have gone to Indian companies and Indian defense majors. Clearly, the shift is discernible, not to depend on imports from anywhere. While India has also imported huge platforms like C-17, C-130, Apaches, Chinook helicopters, a P-8I reconnaissance plane for the Navy, from the United States and Rafales from France. There are other smaller elements which come from Russia and Ukraine. There are missiles, there are the surveillance equipments, there is the AK-203 contract with Russia, which has been signed, and the facility was to begin its production in the old Ordnance Factory Board factory near Amethi. What happens to that contract, nobody knows. Similarly, the Kamov helicopter for the Indian military was supposed to have been signed, although the MOU has been signed in 2016, it hasn't moved forward. Whether that gets scrapped now, we'll have to wait and watch. So the entire issue here is India has taken a decision to be neutral in this conflict between Russia and Ukraine, simply because of its old ties with Russia. It has been a very dependable strategic ally and partner. It has bailed India out of trouble in UN a number of times. But also the very fact that India's defense forces are still dependent largely on Russian equipment and their utilization and their deployment in the field. That will reduce gradually, as it had been planned by the former Defense Minister Manohar Parrikar, that every year from 2016 he wanted to reduce the dependence on imports, not just from Russia but from all over the world, by 10%. While that figure has not been achieved, certainly there is a move towards self-dependence, self-reliance, and that is something which will get accelerated because of what is happening between Russia and Ukraine and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So therefore, this is something that I wanted to flag. There will be talks with Russia. There will be arrangements that will be sought to be created so that smooth supply of these spare parts and weapons and other platforms continues as far as India is concerned. But the entire issue has to be tracked very closely. And India would be hoping that this conflict ends quickly so that it can resume its normal partnership with Russia and Ukraine, as well as not get caught between the fight between the West and Russia over Ukraine. Because India taking a side doesn't help in any manner. It will neither affect the outcome nor will it give India any leverage anywhere between the two countries. Although there are people who are now saying that China and India should take a lead in trying to mediate between the two sides. But whether that will be acceptable to the West and to the two sides remains to be seen again. That's all I have this week. We are nearing the 100 episodes mark of Simply Nitin very soon. I would like to thank all of you for watching Simply Nitin so closely and with so much interest and with diligence, and also suggesting many a times topics and also catching me stating a wrong fact somewhere or giving me an additional fact to speak about is something that I have cherished. We will have a special episode when we reach the figure of 100. But for the moment, that's all I have today. Of course, you have helped us cross the line of 100,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. Keep the subscription coming. Please spread the word to your friends, family, colleagues. And of course, keep sending comments and feedback. We welcome them. We will improve on the content as we go along. As we have mentioned, we have certain offerings coming up soon. But all that is for the future. For the moment, it's goodbye.